theyeshiva.net.
I chose this week, to learn a Maamar from Shabbos Parshas Korach, since this week is Korach. And this is a Maamar, a discourse, that was shared by the Lubavitcher Rebbe on the Shabbos Korach, Shabbos Parshas Korach, which happened to be Gimel Tamuz, the third day of Tamuz, Tovshin Chai, Tovshin Yud Ches, which would be 1958. So that's why you open up your source sheets, you'll see on top it says Beis Samach Daled, Shabbos Parshas Korach, Gimel Tamuz, Hey Tovshin Chai. At that Fabreng in Shabbos Korach, the Lubavitcher Rebbe shared this Maamar, and this week is of course Shabbos Korach. This week is of course also Gimel Tamuz. Now Gimel Tamuz, the third day of Tamuz, now is known as the yahrzeit of the Rebbe. The Rebbe's passing was on Gimel Tamuz in the year Tovshin Daled, 1994, on the third day of Tamuz, which was on a Sunday, Mitzvah Shabbos on a Sunday. That year, 1958, Gimel Tamuz was on Shabbos Korach Gimel Tamuz. But many years before that, in 1927, for those who know a little bit of Russian history, in 1927, Gimel Tamuz was another significant day. What happened was, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi YY Jacobson, the predecessor of the seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe, was arrested by the Bolsheviks, remaining one of the few leaders in Russia who preserved Yiddishkeit under the darkest tyranny of the communist era. He was finally arrested and sentenced to death by a firing squad. Then it was a commuted sentence to 10 years exile in Stalin's Gulag. Then it was commuted to 3 years, and then he was released a few days later. He was imprisoned Tasvav Sivan Tofrej Pezayin, the 15th of Sivan, 1927, and he was tortured there. It was a horrific ordeal. But on Gimel Tamuz, he was set free from prison. They sent him to exile, which exile was no lolly. From going from prison to the Gulag was no treat. But Gimel Tamuz was the day that they set him free. They took him out of prison, the Spalerka prison in Leningrad, which still today looks fearsome. I saw it. I was there. It was, as the saying went, when you went in, very few people made it out of that building. You could still see the titanic, scary terror that the building inculcates in your heart, the sense of dread. The Spalerka prison, that's where the Rebbe was arrested by the Yevsektia. The Yevsektia was the Jewish party, the Jewish section of the Communist Party, whose hatred to Jews and Judaism was incredible. And the Rebbe was arrested, and Gimel Tamuz, Tofresh Pezai, in 1927, he was let out of prison, but he was sent to exile. 10 days later, Yud Beis Tamuz, the 12th day of Tamuz, and Yud Gimel Tamuz, he was set free completely, and he had to leave Russia, and he left Russia at the end of 1927. That was Gimel Tamuz. So at the time, it was like a bittersweet day. He was out of prison, so that was the good news. The bad news is he was going to exile. He was sent to a place called Kostroma. But it turned out that from a 10-year sentence in the Gulag, it became a 3-year sentence, then it became a 10-day sentence. Now, how that happened is a whole story, extraordinary story, but it's not for today. And Yud Beis Tamuz, Yud Gimel Tamuz, 10 days after Gimel Tamuz, he was released from his exile in Kostroma also, and he could return home to his family. I'm giving this background because you'll see the Rebbe is going to mention it, since he said this Maamar on Gimel Tamuz, which was the Chag HaGeula, a celebration of his father-in-law. And it wasn't only a personal celebration of his father-in-law in Russia. His father-in-law was literally responsible for, in those years, all of Judaism was shut down in the communist, in the Soviet Union. And the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, like a lion, he built, I believe, 600 underground Jewish schools, approximately 600 underground Jewish schools You're talking about extraordinary numbers, a whole underground of Yiddishkeit in Russia that was incredible, just incredible. And the underground continued throughout the communist era until the fall of communism in 1989 and 1990. So that day had its own historic significance, Gimel Tamuz. Of course, many years later, became the Yartzeit, the Yom HaYelula of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So this week, which is the week of the Rebbe's Yartzeit is on Thursday, Gimel Tamuz, I thought it would be appropriate to learn this Maamar on Korach. Now, it begins with a different subject, and the second paragraph goes into Korach. Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim v'lo nasan lamoit ragleinu. The Maamar begins, by the way, you have now the source sheets in Zoom also. So you have it in Zoom as well, and you have it on the yeshiva.net. The pasuk says in Tehillim, Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim v'lo nasan lamoit ragleinu. This is Tehillim, chapter 66, Samach Vav. And we say it in davening, right? At night, in Ma'ariv. He placed Hasom Nafsheinu, he placed our soul in life. He took our soul and he cast it. He put it into life. Interesting. And he did not allow our legs to falter. Vayir kveit kedushas meire v'chami admur. Maamar, Dibra Maschal at the Chagagula, Yud Beis Tamuz, Shaschalas Agula, Haisa Begimel Tamuz. My father-in-law, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe saying, my father-in-law, the Rebbe, Kveit Kedushas, Beide V'chami Admur, this is his father-in-law, has a Maamar of his own Chagagula when he was redeemed from the Soviet exile on Yud Beis Tamuz. So the year, Tov Reish, Tzadik Daled, 1934, he would always say or publish a special Torah for the on honor of Yud Beis Tamuz as Chagagula. In 1934, he published a Maamar, or he said a Maamar, which begins with these words, Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim v'lo nasan lamoit ragleinu, which was really a way of celebrating his own unique destiny of being taken out of a place of death and his soul being placed in life, in a place of life, and his legs were preserved. They were not allowed to fall and falter. So my father-in-law explains in his Maamar, which begins with this pasuk, that he said on his own Chagagula, Festival of Redemption, Yud Beis Tamuz 34, and it's connected to this day because the beginning of his Geula was on Gimel Tamuz, on the third day of Tamuz, as I explained in my introduction. So he says, "Da chayim shebehem som nafsheinu, hem chayim nailam yosem mechaya hanefesh mitzad atzma." A soul, by definition, is alive. So when you say, he placed my soul in life, it means that he placed my soul in a life that is even deeper and higher than the life of the soul on its own. A soul is synonymous with life. Soul doesn't die. A soul is life. Life doesn't die. The soul is alive. Nefesh is life. It's a soul. It's spiritual electricity, spiritual vitality, spiritual energy. So it's alive. A soul is alive. So Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim means I took something that's alive. He took something and he placed it in life. So he says that the life in which he placed his soul is obviously a deeper, a higher life than the life of the soul on its own. Hasom Nafsheinu, the soul is alive, but Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim, in a deeper life. The Chaye HaNefesh He Mugbalim, because the life of the soul is limited. Dagam ShaNefesh Hu Chai Be'etzem. Even though the soul is defined, is known in Kabbalah and Chassidus and Machshav as Chai Be'etzem, which means it's essentially alive, its life is essential, deeper and higher than the fact that it extends life to the rest of the body. That's the element of the soul in which it gives life, it shares life with all the aspects of the body. And in that itself, there's Chayis Prati and there's Chayis Kloli. Chayis Prati is the individual, biochemical, the individual current of energy that every single part of the body receives from the soul, based on the central nervous system in the brain. And Chayis Kloli is the collective chiyus that the entire body gets collectively. That's what the soul gives the body. But beyond that, there's the soul itself. It's a Chai Be'etzem. It's essentially alive with or without the body. That's true. Mikol Makoim Kivan the Zesha Nefesh Chai Be'etzem Upnei Shakadosh Baruch Hu Hitbiya Ba Nefesh Teva Zeshi Chai Be'etzem L'chein gam chiyuv zeh b'chinas chai be'etzem hu b'hagbola. V'achayim shebehem Hasom Nafsheinu l'mayla mehateva. But even though the soul is alive essentially, but the reason it's alive is because God, so to speak, imbued in the soul this nature, that it should be alive. So therefore, it's a gift imbued by Hashem, and therefore this vitality, this energy, is ultimately limited. Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim means you took my soul and you placed our soul in a life that is beyond just the nature. The life of the soul itself, that the nefesh is chai be'etzem, is because Hashem gave it that nature, that a soul is something that's alive. That's the nature of it. And because of that, ultimately, it's limited. This is its nature, based on its nature. Here he's saying, Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim, he placed my soul in a life, what's beyond the life of the soul itself, in a life that is beyond nature. V'zeu Hasamna, and if he's looking at footnote 5, you see there's the footnote. So footnote 5 he brings from Rabbi Ovadia Sefarno, Rabbeinu Ovadia Sefarno. He translates this pasuk in Tehillim, Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim hu she'chiyanu bein umas ha'olam neged hateva. What does it mean? He placed my soul in life. A soul is alive. So the Sefarno explains that according to nature, the Jewish people collectively should have not been alive. Hasom Nafsheinu, he took our soul and he placed it in life. After, among many nations, over centuries and millennia, persecuted the Jewish people. According to nature, they should have not been here. And nonetheless, they're alive. He says, neged ateva, that's beyond nature. So that's how the Sefarno even explains it on a literal level, that it's talking about Klal Yisrael collectively, whose soul was placed in a realm of eternal life beyond nature, not subjected to the regular vicissitudes of historical currents, where according to the laws of nature, the Jewish people should have long been obsolete and gone. You know the famous article by Mark Twain they always quote, why the Jewish people are still here, what's the secret of their endurance. That's Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim. On a deeper personal spiritual level, the Maamar explains that there's the life of the soul on its own. It's a chai be'etzem, the nature that Hashem gave it. It's something that's alive. But Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim is even deeper. He takes that which is alive and casts it in life, because this is a whole deeper life, as he's going to explain. He's going to explain what this means. This is just the introduction of the Maamar. I'm sorry. The end of the first paragraph. And that's what the pasuk continues. He did not allow our legs to falter. Our legs don't falter only when our souls are cast in a life which is beyond nature, as shall all be explained. And that's to understand the reason for this, that the soul itself, which is alive, even when you tune into the essential life of the soul, beyond the life of the body, called chai be'etzem, still one's legs can falter. And the ability for v'lo nosan lamoit ragleinu is only from the Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim, the life that is even beyond the soul, beyond nature. V'gam lo v'nashayches dinyan zel agula diyud beis Tamuz, and also to understand why the Rebbe Rayat, the Rebbe's father-in-law, chose to say this Maamar on the Chag HaGeula of Yud Beis Tamuz. What's the connection? Yesh lahagdim, let's give an introduction, and now the Maamar is going to go off completely on a different subject. Now he's going to go into Parshas Korach, and only at the end will the Lubavitcher Rebbe in this Maamar return to this original pasuk in Tehillim Samach Vav, Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim, v'lo nosan lamoit ragleinu. And God willing, when you're done with, when we finish this Maamar, when you say in Ma'ariv, when we speak about Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim v'lo nosan lamoit ragleinu, which we say every single night after Krishma and Ma'ariv, it will have a whole new dimension and depth and meaning. Yesh lahakdim hashakasav b'reish parshaseinu. We have to introduce the opening of this week's parsha, Vayikach Korach. It says, Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahaz ben Levi. Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kahaz, the son of Levi, took. What does Vayikach Korach mean? He took. What did he take? What did he take? So V'tirgim Unkelos, the great Aramaic translation says V'isbele Korach. Vayikach Korach means he took himself away from Moshe, from the community. He split himself. V'isbeleg. Isbeleg comes from the word pilug, which is a split. Like plukta. In Gemara, plukta means a machlaikas, a disputation. Right? Plag, gufa means a half a body. Plag is a half. V'isbeleg means he split himself. When you're part of the community, there is one whole. Vayikach Korach, he didn't take something else. Vayikach Korach, he took himself. V'isbeleg Korach. Korach split himself. He separated himself. He severed his connection with Moshe Rabbeinu, Aaron, the Jewish community. That's what the Zohar says. The b'chol mokem shenemar vayikach tirgim v'nosef, v'kan tirgim v'ispelik. The fascinating thing is, anywhere in Chumash where it says vayikach, the Onkelos' translation is v'nosef. That's the Aramaic translation for taking. Here we would have also expected vayikach Korach, v'nosef Korach. But here, the Targum gives a different translation, v'ispelik. And there's probably a good reason for this. Because usually, vayikach means you take something. You take something. But here, what did he take? What did Korach take? He fought. He didn't take anything. So here, the Onkelos feels compelled to change the translation. Not v'nosiv, but v'ispelik Korach. Korach split himself. Vayikach means he took himself aside and he became a splintered, fragmented entity, meaning he did not want to identify anymore with the system, with the regime, so to speak, with the hierarchy of the Jewish people, as he continued his mutiny, protesting the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu and of Aaron HaKohen. But here we see a fascinating interpretation. The Isa b'Sefer Noam Elimelech. The Sefer Noam Elimelech says the Ispelik Korach wal derech Rakia hamavdil bein mayim lamayim. The Noam Elimelech is a very famous Chassidic work. Many of you have heard about it. Noam Elimelech is one of the early Chassidic classic works that was authored by a man named Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk. Lizhensk is a city in Poland. Reb Melech of Lizhensk was born a short time after the Baal Shem Tov in the year Tov Ayin Zayin, which would be 1717. He was born 1717, Tov Ayin Zayin, and he passed away Chaf Aleph Adar, Tov Kuf Mem Zayin, the 21st day of Adar in the year 1787. He was one of the great students of the Maggid of Mizrich, who was, of course, the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, and became one of the greatest Chassidic masters in Poland. Till today, he's known as the Rebbe Reb Melech. The Rebbe Reb Melech, or the Rebbe Reb Elimelech of Lizhensk. Many years, not this year because of the corona, but every year on his yahrzeit, Chaf Aleph Adar, in recent years, a lot of people go to visit his resting place in Lizhensk in Poland. I was there a number of years ago, not on his yahrzeit, in the winter, in the earlier winter, with a group of students. We went there to visit the gravesite of Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk. There is a story. I don't know if it's. I never verified it in the details. I mean, I just read it once, so I don't know if it. Sometimes stories are not completely authentic, but I just read it once. All the years there was an oil on the grave of Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk, and Chassidim and other Jews would come there to daven to the Rebbeinu Shalom, as they do till today. The story goes that during the Holocaust, during the Second World War, the Germans demanded from Jews to dig open the grave. I don't know what the purpose of it was. I never read what the purpose was. They demanded from them to go to the grave and dig it open. And there's a story that goes in the name of people who were there and survived the war, that Rebbe Elimelech's body was mamish intact, the way it would be when a person is alive, even though he passed away Tov Kuf Mem Zayin, which would be 1787. So you're dealing with more than a century later, 100 years later, but his body was mamish intact. And after the Germans left, the Jewish people did not want him to remain there because they would just destroy all the cemeteries and all the graves, and they placed the body nearby elsewhere. And I don't know the authenticity of this story, but it's quite an interesting episode. He wrote a sefer called Noyam Elimelech. Noyam Elimelech means the sweetness of Elimelech. This Maamar of the Lubavitcher Rebbe is based on this interpretation of the Noyam Elimelech. That V'ispelig, when it says V'ispelig, Korach split himself, go back to the first split. What was the first split? Monday of creation. Now we go back to Bereshis. You remember? On the first day there was only water. The beginning when God created heaven and earth, it says the Spirit of God hovered over the water and God said, let there be light, and there was light. Great. Hashem called light day, darkness he called night. Day one. What happens day two? God says, Yehi Rakia b'soich hamayim v'imavdil b'mayim lamayim. I hope you remember the story in the beginning of Genesis. Let there be a firmament in the water and let it separate between waters. There's the higher water above the heaven, and there's the mayim under the Rakia, the lower waters, mayim tachtoinim. That happens on Monday. There's a firmament that splits the water into two. There's higher water, mayim elyonim, there's lower water, mayim tachtoinim. That's what happens on the Monday. What happens on Tuesday? On Tuesday, God says, Yikavu hamayim el makom echad v'sirah hayabasha. Let all the lower water under the heaven retreat and gather into individual locations so that dry land can appear. And that's when oceans are created, lakes, seas, rivers, well springs, canals, ponds. These are all bodies of water, large or small, which have retreated to particular locations so dry land can emerge rather than being completely submerged in the water. That happens on Tuesday. Also, something else happens on Tuesday. Once there's dry land, God says, Tachea Aretz Desha, let the earth sprout forth with its vegetation and produce. That's Yom HaShlishi, the third day. Comes the Noyam Elimelech and says, when the Targum says, V'ispelei Korach, Korach split himself off. He created a split between himself and the rest of the Jewish people. This is similar to what happened on Monday, the Rakia, the heaven, which separated. God said, let there be a Rakia, which will make a Ispelig, a Plukta, a split between the higher water and the lower water. Now, this is very strange. What in the world is the connection between V'ispelei Korach? Korach is making a machloikas against Moshe and Aaron. What is the connection between that and the split of the waters on the second day of creation? The Noyam Elimelech says it. I opened up the Noyam Elimelech this morning, and he says, Vayikach Korach, and the Noyam Elimelech, Reb Melech of Lezhensk, Targumai V'ispelig. It says V'ispelig. So he says, to understand this Targum, you have to know what it says in Bereshis, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Vav, Yehi Rakia b'soich hamayim. There should be a firmament in the heaven, and it should split the water, a higher water from the lower water. And the Noyam Elimelech goes into his whole explanation. So the Rebbe says, Mavayra Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek has an explanation on this shtickle of Noyam Elimelech. Just like giving the history so people know who's the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was actually, the Rebbe's namesake was the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was a grandson of the Baal HaTanya. The Baal HaTanya Rebbe Shnei Zalman of Liadi, who was a colleague of Reb Melech of Lezhensk, had a daughter, and his daughter's son was the Tzemach Tzedek, Rebbe Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, who succeeded his father-in-law and his uncle, the Mittler Rebbe, after his passing. He was the third Rebbe in the Chabad dynasty. He's known as the Tzemach Tzedek, which is the name of his Sfarim, Shal Setshuvas Tzemach Tzedek. He was one of the great halachic authorities of his times as well. Tzemach Tzedek passed away, Tafresh Chavav. Tafresh Chavav would be 1866. That's almost a century after Reb Melech of Lezhensk. Tzemach Tzedek was born 2 years after Reb Melech passed away. He has a sefer, a set of Sfarim called Ohr HaTorah, on the Parsha, Ohr HaTorah. It's around, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's, like 30, 40 books, Ohr HaTorah. In Ohr HaTorah, Parshas Korach, the Tzemach Tzedek quotes this Noyam Elimelech about Vayikach Korach. And the Tzemach Tzedek says, Tzemach Tzedek says as follows. The Peter Zeshav is Spele Kairach Wal Derech Rekia Mavdil Hu Al Pima De Issa Bezoyha. The Noyam Elimelech was not speaking in a vacuum. This idea that Korach split has to do with the split of the water on the second day of creation is based on a comment in the Zohar. The Zohar teaches us, by the way, everything is footnoted. So you see when it says Zohar, it says footnote 9. So if somebody wants to look it up, you see footnote 9, and you go to footnote 9 on the bottom, and you could see Zohar Chelik Aleph Daf Yud Zayin. Everything is footnoted. The Rebbe was very makbid. He was very meticulous, unlike in previous generations, that everything should be referenced and footnoted, because as I heard from him once, he said, because the main focus is that people should learn all the sources. So that's why he wanted everything footnoted, so people could learn the sources. So the Zohar says, the Rakia HaMavdil have a machloikes smola b'yamina kegavna da machloikes koirach bar. The Zohar makes the enigma a little more mysterious. The Zohar says that the machloikes of the second day of creation, the firmament that splits the water, is the fight between the left and the right. Smola b'yamina. The machloikes, the dispute of the left versus the right. Now what is this? Republicans versus the Democrats? The right-wingers versus the left-wingers? The pro-Trump supporters and anti-Trumps. What's this machloikes smola b'yamina? On the second day of creation, they were already fighting about President Trump. Lahavdil. What's the smola b'yamina? Kegavna da machloikes koirach ba'aron. And so it says that's similar to the fight of Korach against Aaron. It's the fight of Smoil and Yamin, between the left and the right. So we see the Noam Elimelech wasn't just throwing out an idea of Ispelig is like the split of the heavens. It's based on the Zohar. The Zohar says that the split of the second day is Smoil and Yamin, left and right, which is a reflection of the machloikas of the fight of Korach against Aaron. The mizem movin shashaych is the Ispelig Korach l'rakia mavdil. He learned up in the shashaydish the machloikas. Eza machloikas shetiyeh m'rakia mavdil. From this we understand a new depth. Literally, you would explain the Noam Elimelech that the connection between Korach splitting away from Moshe and Aaron and the heaven splitting the water is because all machloikas begins with the second day of creation. When the firmament split the water, that's the origin of machloikas. Kedisa b'medrash. In fact, it says in Medrash Rabbah, as he says in footnote 10, the Medrash tells us. This is Medrash Rabbah, Parshas Bereshis, Parsha Dalad. Bereshis, you see, footnote 10. Bereshis Rabbah, Parsha Dalad Vav. Medrash Rabbah, section 4, chapter 4, section 10. Says the Medrash, Lama enksiv b'sheni kitoiv, sheboy nivras machloikas shenema v'mavdil ben mayim l'mayim. The only day of creation where it doesn't say kitoiv is Monday. Sunday it says Hashem saw was good. Tuesday it was good, and Wednesday it was good. Thursday was good. Friday he saw everything he did. V'hinei toiv miyoid, it was very good. One day it does not say that God saw it was good. When? Monday. Why not? Why not? So you know what the Medrash says? Sheboy nivras machloikas. Because machloikas was created on Monday. It's an amazing Medrash. The concept of machloikas, of a split, of a fight, of a dispute, started on Monday. Why? Which machloikas? Machloikas between the water. V'hi rakia mavdil bein mayim l'mayim. There should be a heaven, a firmament that separates. The concept of a split, of a machloikas, what we call a quarrel, a fight, began. The word machloikas comes from the word yachloiku, right? Like we have in Baba Metzia Shnayim and Betalis, two people are holding a cloak. Everyone says it's mine. Yachloiku, they split. It's a split. When was the first split in existence? On Monday. God doesn't see that it's good. He made the machloikas, but he doesn't say it's good. That's what the Medrash says. What do we learn from this Medrash? That the genesis of machloikas in the world happens on the first Monday of creation. Even though then it was a divine act. It was not a human act. There was no human being. It was a completely divine act, part of the design of creation. And it's the reason we have water. And nobody is surviving without water, because how much percent of our body is water? 60 or 70% of our body is water, and 92% of our blood cells is made up of water. and we live 9 months in water, and we survive on water, and everybody and everything survives on water. So it's this split that allowed for the lower water, but nonetheless, Monday created the split. So then we can explain, that's what the Noam Elimelech meant. That Korach, who fought this major fight against Moshe and Aaron, Korach staged a mutiny, a rebellion against Moshe and Aaron. He made a machlokes. Where does it begin? It begins in the genesis, in the progenitor, in the mother of all fights. What's the mother of all machlokes? Monday of creation, when God split the water. That's what we would say naturally is the meaning of the Noam Elimelech's words. The Ishpele Korach goes back to the first split. But from the Tzemach Tzedek's association of the Noam Elimelech's interpretation with the Zohar, we see it's not just a cute comment that it all began on Monday, but there's actually a thematic connection. It's not just a general connection. All machlokes began on Monday. There's a thematic connection. That's what he says. Elashagam machlokes zu befrat. Machlokes Korach ba'anani dugmas v'sharshi machlokes derekiya hamavd. The connection between machlokes and Monday is every machlokes. Any time there is a split, you can blame it on the split of the water. That's true. What we're saying here is it's deeper than that. This individual machlokes with its theme, the fight of Korach against Aaron, is a reflection of that split that the firmament created on the second day, and it's rooted in it. That is the source of this machlokes. The Kamosh, machlokes derekiya mavdeli machlokes smola biyamina, al derech zei machlokes Korach ba'adam. The Adanu b'kava chesed yamin, the Korach shaya levehim abchinas gvuras smol. Just like the split on the second day is the split between left and right, the same is true Korach and Aaron. Aaron represents the energy of chesed. It says in Zohar that Kohanim come from the chamber of love. We say in Pirkei Avos, Hevei mitalmidav shel Aaron, oyev shalom, v'roidev shalom, oyev esabrias, u'mekarvan l'Torah. Be the student from the students of Aaron, Hillel tells us in chapter 1 of the Ethics. Love peace, pursue peace, love people. Aaron generally represents the kav of chesed. The kav is the line, the component, the dimension of loving kindness and benevolence. Korach shaya Levi, Korach was a Levite. Korach was a cousin of Aaron. They both came from Shevet Levi. Levi had 3 sons, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. And from Kahas, you had the family of Aaron and Moshe, because Kahas had a son, Amram, and Amram, of course, his son was Aaron, who was the Kohen, and Moshe, and Miriam. And then Kahas had another son. You had Yitzhar, and Korach was the son of Yitzhar. So Korach was a first cousin of Moshe and Aaron. Maamar a first cousin because their fathers were siblings. Moshe and Aaron's father was Amram. Korach's father was Yitzhar, and Amram and Yitzhar were both brothers. They were children of Kahas. You're looking at me as I'm brilliant. This says in Chumash. I didn't invent this. If you'd learned Chumash, you would know this as well. So therefore, Korach was from Levi. He was a Levi. He was a Levite. The Leviim are known as coming from the level of Gevura, smile, strength, discipline, boundaries, not Kohanim. Aaron is Chesed, Korach is Gevura. Korach splits away from Aaron. He creates a dispute with Aaron. He stages a mutiny against Aaron. This is rooted, and it's a replica of the split of Monday of creation. It was also the split of Gevura and Chesed. So this, in summation, is how the Tzemach Tzedek understands the depth of the words of the holy Noam Elimelech, the Rebbe Melech of Lezhensk, which are rooted in the interpretation of Zohar about that split. Every machlokes is rooted in the first machlokes of Monday, but this one specifically because of its content and its theme. Let's see if there's any questions before we go to the next paragraph. So somebody mentions that Dor Haflaga also means a split. Haflaga is also a split. And because they were splintered, right? The pasuk says at the end of Noach that everybody spoke one language, a common language. Vayhi kol haaretz safa echas advarim achadim. And they decided to build a tower and make for themselves a name. And they were worried about being scattered, pen nofuts. And then Hashem ultimately splits them, right? B'yamav niflaga haaretz, the expression in Chumash in the days of Peleg, niflega haaretz. So der haflaga means a split. They were splintered. You're right. It's a very good comment. In fact, Rabbeinu Bechaya and the Megala Amukas have a whole Torah that the Korach and his people were a reincarnation of the der haflaga. A second proof to that is they are associated in the Torah as Anshe Shem, men of name, men of renown. Very unique expression, Anshe Shem. Where's that expression used before? We always do Gzeira Shava. Let's remember, whenever you have an expression in Chumash, you have to think, where is that used? It's used by the Der HaFlaga. When they build the tower, they said, V'nasa lanu shem, let's make a name for ourselves. It is also connected with the Der HaFlaga as well, and the fact is, Maaamarim that explain the deeper connection between Korach and the Der HaFlaga. Very good comment. Okay. Next question. The first comment was from Reb Aaron. Thank you. The next is from Reb Moshe. Fine. V'yesh lahaisif. We can also add the Shnei Inyanim Elu. The Shnei Inyanim Elu shebevis Spalei Korach. Machloikes v'zeh shechalak al Aaron shayachim zeh lezeh. On a deeper level, these two themes that Korach fought, he created a machloikes, and he fought against Aaron, these two are actually connected. It's not just, we said, that every machlokes is rooted in the first machlokes of Monday, but particularly, this machlokes is rooted in the theme of the first Monday machlokes. The two concepts are actually connected. The Hinei Zeh, Shabriyas HaMachlokes Rekiya HaMavdel HaSabiyah Masheni Davka, Hukiyay Marishin Umidas HaChesed Yemin, V'yoy Masheni Umidas HaGvura Smoil, Umitzad HaGvura, Yesh Nesinas Mokim LaMachlokes. Why was Machlokes Taka created on Monday? Why Monday? And the answer is because Monday represents Gvura. The first day of creation, every day of the 7 days of creation represents a different energy, a different midah. The Zohar says, Kol yoyma v'yoyma avid avidite. Hashem made on every day the creations that are a reflection of that particular attribute. Sunday every week is a reflection of midas hachesed. The attribute of love vibrates in the universe. Monday is midas hagvura, it's the attribute of gvura. Not just because you go back to work. Maybe that too. But Monday is connected with gvura. Tuesday is connected to Tiferes. Revi Netzach. Thursday Hoid. Friday Yisoid. And Shabbos is connected to Malchus. So the first day is Midas HaChesed. It's the attribute of Chesed, which is Yemin. The right is associated with kindness. The second day is Midas HaGvura. The attribute of Gvura, strength, discipline, boundaries, which is associated with the left. Umitzad HaGvura yesh nesinas mokim l'machlokes. And whenever there's Gvura, there's room for a split. Because what's the Gvura? Gvura means there's boundaries. There's limits. Gvura is categorization. Gvura is strictness. Gvura is discipline. Mitzad Gvura, there's room for a machlokes. There's differences, there's distinctions, there's disputes. Chesed is love, it's benevolence, it connects everything, it integrates everything, it sees the oneness. Gvura focuses on the differences. That's what boundaries are. Boundaries are, what does boundaries mean? It means we're different. I have my space, you have your space. Chesed obliterates differences, or denies differences, or ignores differences, or doesn't see differences. That's what chesed is. That's the energy of chesed. Gvura is a very different energy. Gvura is based on differences. That's what Gvura is based. That's why there's boundaries. Boundaries is, I need my space, you need your space. And you cannot cross, you cannot trespass. Why? Because trespassing is going to be destructive. It's going to be unhealthy. That's why chesed is so important, because chesed is the connection, but gvura is equally important, because gvura represents the fact that there are limits, there is a system, there is boundaries. Now, some people are very, very good at chesed, some people are very, very good at gvura. We could do a poll now, if we want, on Zoom we could do a poll, and everybody could say what they're good at, but just think about, Is your weakness chesed? Are you good in gvura and weak in chesed? Or are you powerful in chesed, but your weakness is in gvura? So gvura is connected to machloikas because gvura creates room for miscommunication, for a split, for separateness. That's gvura. Ukadisa b'zoyar sham. The Zoyar says, Yemina iyu shleima dekula, beital yekol shlimu. Kad isar smala isar machloikas. The Zoyar says there that in the rightness, in the right, that's where you see perfection. And on the right, on chesed, depends all perfection. When the left gets aroused, machloikas gets aroused. That's what the Zohar says. Val piza yesh loymar sheikir inyane shel kairach umachloikas. Kemuven gam mizeh shamru razal kol hamachzik b'machloikas over belav shenemar v'layiyah kekairach v'chadasa. The mizeh shamachzik b'machloikas eze machloikas shetiyu kekairach v'adasa muchach sheikir inyane shel kairach umachloikas. V'zeh shecholak al aron chesed v'ratzel lasas agvuris ikir hu shayideze yiyah chizuk l'machloikas. According to this, you could say the following. The main theme of Korach is machloikas, the fight. That's why the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Kuf Yud, somebody who holds on to a machloikas transgresses a lav, a sin. The pasuk says, in this week, as you see in footnote 15, the pasuk says, "V'layiyah keKorach v'chadasa." He should not be like Korach and his community. When somebody holds on to a machloikas, he transgresses this verse. Now it doesn't say what machloikas, any machloikas. It should say a machloikas which is similar to Korach. No, any machloikas, you're already transgressing the pasuk which says don't be like Korach. But how could you compare? What if I'm fighting for a different cause? From here we learn that Korach's theme is machloikas. It doesn't matter what. If there's a machloikas, it's rooted in Korach. The details of the machloikas, that's a second subject. And that's where the Gemara says, Kol hamachzik b'machloikas over belav. If I hold on to a machloikas, we'll see later what that means. If I hold on to a machloikas, if I hold on to this fight, I am already transgressing the Aveira, the mitzvah, that's a pasuk that says, do not be like Korach. Even though my machloikas may be a very different issue. What do we learn from here? That the essence of Korach is machloikas. And the fact that he fought with Aaron was just the manifestation of the essential theme. Korach's theme is machloikas. How do you make machloikas powerful? By making gvura more powerful than chesed. The moment gvura becomes more powerful than chesed, now machloikas is given powerful legitimacy. You need gvura, but when gvura is subservient to chesed, machloikas doesn't have legitimacy. When the gvura becomes the main thing and the chesed becomes subservient to gvura, now machloikas can thrive. In other words, when distinctions, boundaries, categorizations, systems, discipline, separation is a detail in chesed, it's subservient to chesed. From that there's no machloikas. Korach's theme was machloikas. How do you give machloikas such power? When gvura can overshadow chesed, when gvura overshadows chesed, now there could be machloikas. You'll see all machloikas in the world is associated from the fact that the gvura overshadowed and eclipsed the chesed. Korach was gvura, Aaron was chesed. By defeating Aaron in his mind, gvura prevails. If gvura prevails, the concept of machloikas prevails. So the two themes now suddenly became connected. We said before that every machloikas is rooted in Monday. But in this case, it's not just everyone, it's the specifics of left versus right. Now we're saying the two things are really connected. Because the reason machloikas happened on Monday is because it's midas hagvura. So by putting gvura against chesed and having gvura more powerful than chesed, the very institution of machloikas is given extraordinary power, substance, and legitimacy. But v'tzarich lohav, and here we have to understand this whole premise. Harei Korach pikei achoyo. Korach was a wise man. Korach was a wise man. Chazal say in Medrash Parshas Korach, Rashi quotes it, Korach was no fool. Umistaber loymar shamachloikas shalei al kohunas Aaron ha'isam epnei shetah b'darkei havodah. If that's the case, it's logical to say that the reason he fought Aaron was because he made a mistake b'darkei ha'avodah, in his ways, in his understanding of avodas Hashem. If Korach was a pikeach, it means that even his fight came from a place of wisdom. If so, his fight against Aaron was because of an error in how he understood what is the right way to serve God. What would then be the spiritual wisdom in desiring fighting and disputations and quarreling and bickering? That's why I could understand why he argues and fights with Aaron. You could say Korach felt that avodas Hashem has to be primarily in the attribute of gvura. He fought with Aaron, whose avodah was chesed. There could be different opinions. Some people feel the main avodah has to be through the kav of gvura, and some through the kav of chesed. We still argue about this, right? The balance between love and discipline. The balance between saying yes and saying no. Everybody knows you need both. If you have only chesed without gvura, it's an absolute disaster. If you have only gvura without chesed, it's an absolute disaster. So Korach felt the main avodah is gvura. Aaron felt the main avodah is chesed. That I can understand. That doesn't mean you're not a pikeach. It means you're making a mistake. But according to our explanation, that Korach wanted gevura to prevail over chesed, not because he had a different perspective in avodas Hashem, like Beis Shammai versus Beis Hillel, but because he wanted to give strength and substance to the existence of machloikas. And machloikas was created on Monday, which is the day of gevura. And that's why Korach wanted gevura to prevail, so that machloikas should have power. Because it's the gevura of life that allows for all machloikas. That's why he wanted the gevura to prevail. Now is the question, how could a wise person think that machloikas is a derech b'avodas Hashem? Beautiful wording. How can anybody think that machloikas, that fighting, is a path in God's service? I can understand that gevura is a path in God's service, maybe the primary path, as Korach believed. But that machloikas is a derech in avodas Hashem. Where does this come from? And Korach was a pikeach, which means don't just dismiss him as an insignificant, inconsequential, foolish, narcissistic, hedonistic, self-centered, self-absorbed rabble-rouser. Korach pikeach hoya means one has to study Korach. One has to understand Korach. The Chayz of Lublin, the Holy Seer of Lublin, was a Levi, right? And he was once speaking Parshas Korach. He said the Heilige Zedek Korach, which means the Holy Zedek Korach. What did he mean by the Holy Zedek Korach? Korach, sometimes you look at Korach and he's just this horrific rabble-rouser. And the Chayz of Lublin, who was, by the way, a student of the Noam Elimelech, the Seer of Lublin was a student of the Noam Elimelech, one of his great students. So the Chayz of Lublin, Rabbi Yitzchak Horowitz, who was a Levi, once said, "The Heilige Zedek Korach, my holy Zedek Korach." In other words, you have to understand Korach, even if he made a mistake. Asks the Lubavitcher Rebbe, what's the pikchus, what's the wisdom in saying that machloikus is a path in avodas Hashem? What does this mean? How can you say that? If a gam tzadich lov in masha metargim ve'ispele Korach, de ve'ispele go derech rakia hamavdil de lechaire, had a gam shmoishel Korach atzmei rebes rakia hamavdil. Furthermore, the Targum says what's vayikach ve'ispele, Korach split. And the Noam Elimelech says that's like the firmament that created a split. But the name of Korach himself represents the firmament that splits the water. This is interesting. Korach's name himself represents already the Rakia Hamavdil. Korach's name himself. As the Tzemach Tzedek says, that Korach's name, the pasuk says in Yecheskel, Rakia, you have a Rakia, firmament, Ke'ein HaKerach, which looks like the ice. However you understand that verse in Yecheskel, in the famous vision of Yecheskel, Rakia Ke'ein HaKerach. So Korach itself, Kuf Reish Ches, already represents a Rakia. Before Vayikach Korach. So just the word Korach already is the Rakia Hamavdil, because Rakia Ke'ein HaKerach. What's now the addition of Vayikach Korach, even a deeper element in this Rakia? It's like two stages. What is the explanation in that? Of course, also the word Korach is Kuf Reish Ches, which in Hebrew means Kireach. Kireach or Karachas means a bald spot. So if you tear out here from a particular place, you create a separation. You create a bald spot between one section of the head which has hair and the other section of the head which has hair. And this is like a machloikas, kireach. It's like a bald spot. You have in Meseches Kilayim something called karachas hakerem, the bald spot in the vineyard. The bald spot in the vineyard. If I have a vineyard, and I want to plant grain, and you're not allowed to plant grain in a vineyard unless you create a bald spot. In other words, you have to have a section of the vineyard which is empty, which is bald. It's called karachas, koirach, kireach. And then if you have enough space, machlokes b'shamai, b'silo, how much space you need, you could plant grain in the vineyard. So here too, it's a concept of machlokes, because whenever you create a machlokes, you create a split. So now you're on this side, I'm on this side, and there is a gulf, there is a bald spot that separates us, and there is no connection. So just the name koirach and the word kerach already represents the Rakia Hamavdil. Even before Vayikach Korach. But it's the Targum that says there's another element, Vayikach. This Korach went further. The split was taken even further. That means there's two stages there. What is the addition of number 2 over number 1? So actually this concludes the first section, the introduction, that creates the buildup of the Maamar, which starts leading into the explanation. Let me take some questions. Is the political left more related to Chesed or more related to Gvura? That's a politically loaded question. And whatever I answer will not be politically correct, will it? The political left is a complicated phenomenon, and it's certainly above my pay grade to analyze, certainly at this moment. Somebody says, certainly there are fights that are holy and correct. The Rebbe himself was jailed in 1927 because of his machloikas with communism. Yeah. Rashi says that Moshe told Korach, you're fighting with God because God is the one who told me to give the priesthood to Aaron, and it's not our personal fight. What midah does Moshe represent in this discussion? Okay, good question. Okay, these are all good questions, and God willing, as the Maamar continues, this will become clear, because this is just like setting everything in place to actually begin the explanation. So what's the exercise of today's shiur? The exercise of today's shiur is, let's summarize what we learned, and God willing, we will resume on Thursday morning, 7:30. So we learned the concept of Hasom Nafsheinu Bachayim v'leinosan lamoit ragleinu, the whole explanation, and then we learned about the Noyam Elimelech Vayikach Korach, and the Zohar's explanation, and the connection between Korach's machloikas and the machloikas of Monday, and the idea that all machloikas is rooted in Gvura, and Korach wanted machloikas to be powerful, and that's why he wanted Gvura to prevail over Aaron. And we were left with the question, what would be the wisdom behind this perception and behind this idea? And finally, the name itself, Korach's name itself, represents this split. What's the additional aspect that comes from Vayikach Korach, from V'ispel Korach? Those who want, since you have the source sheets, you could continue learning on your own, as they call in yeshiva, make a leinung, continue learning on your own and try to understand it to the best of your ability, and then you'll certainly appreciate the next year much more, because you will have already learned at least the basic information. And if you don't understand everything, that's also fine. I would think it's a good idea for those of you who can, and even if you can't, if you want, you could, to prepare this Maaamar and learn it further on your own, almost till the end, and then at the next year, I think you'll be able to understand it much better. But let me leave you with this exercise, which I think would be very, very, very beneficial to all of us, and that is, look at the balance in your life between chesed and gvura. As we said, Aaron is chesed and Korach is gvura. Both of them are necessary in life. If they wouldn't be necessary, they wouldn't be existing. The first day is chesed, the second day is gvura. But the question is, what prevails over what? So ask yourself this question. Is there chesed in your life? How is that chesed doing? Is there gvura in your life? How is that gvura doing? But what's the ecosystem has to be balanced, give and take. What is the balance between chesed and gvura? Some of us are very good with chesed. It's our natural disposition. With gvura, we run away from gvura. Maybe because we were traumatized by people who had a lot of gvura, and therefore we go to the other extreme. So therefore we're allergic. Some of us are allergic to gvura because we see gvura as abuse. Because maybe that's what we experienced, or we're just frightened. So we think we're going to go the other extreme. But it's really coming from weakness. It's not coming from strength. Because from strength, you have to have chesed, you have to have gvura. Other people are very good at gvura. But their chesed, they may have never seen it in their life. Or maybe they're afraid of it. Or maybe they had some experience with it, which was very, very negative. It did not do well for them. It was like anarchy and chaos. So they go to the other extreme with gvura. And it's important that we can evaluate these aspects in our lives, especially how we deal with ourselves, with our spouse, with our children, with our grandchildren, with our students, with our employees, with our partners, with our employer, with our friends, to be able to see this balance. And the key here is, you need chesed, you need gvura, but the gvura cannot overshadow the chesed. The gvura has to be subservient to chesed, not the other way around. Meaning, the purpose of gvura is love. The purpose of love is not gvura. The purpose of love is chesed. The purpose of gvura is chesed. The purpose of boundaries, of discipline, of structure, of saying no is that there should be a deeper connection. When it becomes the other way around, the purpose of the connection is to create the boundaries and the structures, and the whole point of the love becomes overshadowed by the gvura. In other words, the gvura becomes the dominant feature, then ultimately the person is missing the point. So gvura you must have, chesed you must have. People who don't believe in one of them are badly mistaken, because they're both in very important components. But you have to remember that the gvura is a tool for chesed. The chesed is not a tool for gvura. You need space, you need boundaries, there's discipline, there's consequences, there's being present, there's the ability to say no when you know that saying yes is destructive. But the reason you say no is so that the yes should be a stronger yes, not that the no becomes more powerful than the yes. And frankly, that balance is not easy. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for many of us. This is something we have to work on. Korach somehow wanted to turn the gvura into the primary principle of life, as we shall see. Tomorrow morning, God willing, 9:30 a.m., there will be a class for women. And Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday evening, we have live lectures, as well as Wednesday evening, as well as Thursday evening. They'll all be on the yeshiva.net, so you could see them there. This shiur will resume, God willing, Thursday morning, 7:30 a.m. It's also Gimel Tamuz, the Yom HaYelula of the Rebbe. And I wish you all a beautiful and inspiring and meaningful and uplifting and beloved week.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.